Live from the BDN Studios, it's Bang and Dang.
That's awesome.
If you don't like that, then
You ain't black.
Welcome to Battles, American Civil War, Behind the Battles. Your host, Bang and Dang, back with another Behind the Battles with Bang and Dang. This week, we're taking on the boy general, old George Armstrong Custer. He was pretty damn good in the Civil War, but obviously everybody remembers him for getting slaughtered at the old Battle of Little Bighorn.
Sure did.
And we'll take a look at that as well as the Civil War stuff and his legacy and his early years as usual. He's the youngest, youngest brigadier general or major, one of the two in the history of, well, up until this time of the war. So good for him. He's German as well, as we'll get here too, because it's late 17th century Europe, and it's a messy ass place. Nobody wants to be there. We got wars, religious conflicts among the thousands of Palatines, which are folks from the Rhineland region, what we now call Germany, the Rhinelanders. There was Paulus and Gertrude Custer, Custer's ancestors on his dad's side.
Okay.
Around 1693, they made the dangerous trek across the Atlantic to the English colonies in North America. Why? Well, the English government, they said, here's the deal. Come settle in the New World, and we'll help cover your passage.
Oh.
And that's a win-win, because you got new land for the colonists and new settlers for the colonies.
Right.
Paulus and Gertrude, they were likely part of this wave, planting the Custer family roots in the New World.
Oh, it's a whole new world. Let's shift into the maternal side of Custer's family tree. His mother's ancestor, they hailed from a different corner of the world. England, Northern Ireland. They were of English and Ulster Scots.
It's not really a different corner of the world. It's literally right next to each other.
This brought a mix of cultural influences from across the British Isles. Unfortunately, some of the records here are a little bit murky. Historians have tried to pin down the details, but there's a failed verification note in the archives. Meaning, we're still piecing together the puzzle.
We don't know where his mama's family came from.
They didn't keep their very good records over there back then. Even here.
Anywhere.
Still, it's very clear that Custer's maternal line added a distinct Anglo-Irish flavor to its heritage.
Meaning no flavor.
Right.
That was in New Rumley, Ohio, where George Armstrong Custer entered the world in 1839. Well, his father, Emmanuel, Henry Custer, he was a hard-working farmer and a blacksmith. He was born in 1806 and lived all the way to 1892.
Look at that shit.
Wow.
Very rare.
His mama lived way after his son. Jeez. His mama, Marie Ward Kirkpatrick, she was Emmanuel's second wife, born in 1807 and passed in 1882.
Okay.
According to family letters, Custer's name wasn't just a random pick. His devout mom had big dreams for her son. She named him after George Armstrong, who was a minister, hoping that old little George would follow in those holy footsteps and join the clergy. Well, we all know that didn't happen. But together, they raised a lively household. And old George, he wasn't the only one in it.
Oh, he had some bros and sis. Well, he did. Custer had two younger brothers, Thomas and Boston, who were close companions in his early years, obviously.
Wow, what else does he have?
All right. The family also included their youngest sister, Margaret, and a brother named Nevin, who struggled with asthma and rheumatism.
Rheumatoid arthritis, right?
On top of that, George had three older half-siblings from his father's first marriage. This making Custer home of a bustling blend of personalities. The Custer Bunch. One thing that tied his siblings together, guess what that was? It was a shared love of practical jokes.
Oh.
Apparently, George and his bros were always pulling pranks on each other and the family, keeping their family on their toes with their mischievous streak. Oh, that's nice.
Well, let's talk about old Manuel. He wasn't just a blacksmith hammering out horseshoes. He was a passionate Jacksonian Democrat, deeply engaged in the politics of his day. Emmanuel, he didn't shy away from sharing his views, and he instilled a sense of toughness and political awareness in his kids from a young age. In a letter dated February 3rd, 1887, written to George's widow, Libby, we'll get to her, Emmanuel shared a memory from when George, known as Audie to the family, when he was about 4 years old. He said, "We had to have a tooth drawn, and he was very much afraid of blood.
Ooh.
When I took him to the doctor to have the tooth pulled, was in the night, and I told him if it bled well, it would get well right away, and he must be a good soldier. When he got to the doctor, he took his seat, and the polling began. The forceps slipped off, and he had to make a second trial. He pulled it out, and Audie never even scrunched.
Oh.
Going home, I led him by the arm. He jumped and skipped and said, "Father, you can whip me all the wigs in Michigan."
Oh.
Or you and me can whip all the wigs in Michigan.
Okay.
I thought that was saying a good deal, but I did not contradict him.
Right.
Why is he talking about whipping wigs?
Right. Daddy must have been talking about wigs a lot.
Apparently.
George eventually moved to Monroe, Michigan, to live with his older half-sister and her husband. He did that so he can attend school.
Well, there's just another set of Ohio's going to Michigan to go to school.
Illiterate bastards. But before he set his sights on the military, Custer enrolled at the McNeely Normal School in Hopedale, Ohio, which is later called Hopedale Normal College. This wasn't some fancy academy.
No shit, it's normal.
It was a practical school focused on training teachers for elementary classrooms. Money was tight, so George and his classmate William Enos Emery, they hauled coal to cover their room and board. By 1856, Custer graduated from McNeely, took up teaching in Cadiz, Ohio. It was there that he met his first love, a young woman named Mary Jane Holland. A bit of small-town romance before the battlefield called.
Just toss her to the side.
Right.
Well, fast forward July 1st, 1857, and Custer stepped into the United States Military Academy at West Point as a cadet in the class of 1862.
Ooh.
That's when he was supposed to graduate.
Right.
Obviously, this was a big deal. 79 cadets started a rigorous 5-year program alongside him. But the war changed everything.
He ain't kidding.
Nation split apart in 1861. West Point said, "We got to shorten this from 5 years to 4 years."
Damn right.
Custer and his classmates graduated June 24th, 1861. But his class was whittled down to just 34 graduates. 23 cadets flunked out academically. 22 others left to join the Confederacy. And old Custer, he scraped by, ranking dead last, 34 of 34.
Ooh, some bitch. Wow. Well, this is where Custer's personality really comes into focus. Rules and boundaries, they weren't exactly his thing. During his 4 years at West Point, he racked up a jaw-dropping 726 demerits, most of anybody we've had so far.
Yes.
One of the worst conduct records in Academy's history. The local minister back home wasn't even surprised. He described Custer as the instigator of devilish plots during church services and Sunday school. Always looking attentive on the outside while his mind churned with mischievous ideas on the inside. A fellow cadet remembered Custer saying there were only 2 places in the class, the head or the foot. Since he had no interest in being the head, he was fine aiming for the foot.
Okay.
Another roommate summed it up perfectly. He said, "It was all right with George Custer. Whether he knew his lesson or not, he simply did not allow it to trouble him."
He didn't care.
Didn't give a shit.
All right. Well, fresh out of West Point, June 1861, the war's raging. He was commissioned as a second lieutenant and thrown into the chaos. He was assigned to the 2nd U.S. Cavalry Regiment, tasked with drilling volunteers in Washington, D.C. Just weeks later, July 21st, 1861, he found himself at the First Battle of Bull Run during the Manassas Campaign.
That's a terrible battle to start.
Right. Picture him, barely 21, galloping through the chaos, carrying messages for Army Commander Winfield Scott, back and forth to Major General Irvin McDowell. Little boy. After the battle, he stuck around D.C., helping with the city's defenses, until illness sidelined him in October, which he didn't return to his unit until February of 1862.
Damn.
Well, by March, he was back in action with the 2nd Cavalry. Then he joined the Peninsula Campaign in Virginia, which kept him busy through April.
Sure in hell did. April 5th, 1862, Custer switched to the 5th Cavalry Regiment, just as they dove into the siege of Yorktown, a month-long standoff that lasted until May 4th. He also became an aide to Major General George McClellan, who was leading the Army of the Potomac. Then on the 24th of May, with McClellan and his staff, they were scouting a crossing point on the Chickahominy River. They hesitated, unsure of its depth. General John Bernard, he muttered, "I wish I knew how deep it is." Custer, never one to miss a moment, spurred his horse straight into the river, turned back to the stunned officers and shouted, "McClellan, that's how deep it is, General."
Right, I mean, jeez. Nobody else thought to do that. Apparently, this wasn't his only stunt. Custer, he was tasked with leading an attack across the Chickahominy above New Bridge, which he did while commanding 4 companies of the 4th Michigan Infantry. The mission was a success. They captured 50 Confederate soldiers and snagged the first Confederate battle flag of the whole war.
Ooh, captured flag.
McClellan, he called it a very gallant affair. And he personally congratulated Custer, who was already learning how to grab the spotlight.
Nice.
This role as McClellan's aide-de-camp sparked his lifelong chase for publicity. His reward? Well, he got promoted to captain June 5th, 1862.
Nice.
But in true Custer fashion, he hit a speed bump and was demoted back to first lieutenant on July 17th.
Oh, shit.
Undeterred, he kept rolling, fighting in the Maryland campaign from September to October, which included the Battle of South Mountain, September 14th. Also, the bloody Battle of Antietam, September 17th. And on to the March to Warrenton, Virginia in October.
Look at this guy. Thick of things.
Ain't it all?
9th of June, 1863. Custer's career took another leap. He became an aide to Brevet Lieutenant Colonel Alfred Pleasanton. Pleasanton was commanding the Cavalry Corps of the Army of the Potomac. Custer adored Pleasanton, later saying, "I do not believe a father could love his son more than General Pleasanton loves me."
Hey, it's a way to be full of yourself, bud.
Oh, Pleasanton's first big task? Well, it was to track down Robert E. Lee's army as it moved north through the Shenandoah Valley, setting the stage for what would become the Gettysburg Campaign, the turn of the war. Mm-hmm. Custer was right in the thick of it, as he always is. He's proven himself a daring cavalryman with a knack for making headlines. Good for him. Headlines.
Well, June of the same year, 1863, things are moving fast. June 22nd, his mentor, Alfred Pleasanton, is promoted to Major General of U.S. Volunteers. A week later, on the 29th, Pleasanton, working with the new Army of the Potomac commander, George Meade, he starts shaking things up. He's done with political generals who play it safe.
Damn right.
He said he wants fighters, men who are ready to lead from the front.
Damn right.
He picks 3 of his aides for immediate promotions.
Okay.
Wesley Merritt, Elon Farnsworth, both who had command experience, and our guy Custer, who has got none.
None.
Just 23 years old, Custer is named Brigadier General of Volunteers, commanded the Michigan Cavalry Brigade, known as the Wolverines, which was under Brigadier General Judson Kilpatrick's division. With no command experience, but Custer molds the brigade in his image, which is aggressive, takes some risks, fearless, and always ready to charge.
Damn right. Well, now a General, Custer gets to pick his own uniform. And let's just say he doesn't go subtle. His flashy style, gold braid and velvet, it raises eyebrows. But it's not just vanity. Historian Tom Carhart notes it's about command presence. Custer wants his men to spot him instantly on the battlefield. And the enemy.
And the enemy, right.
Leading from the front to boost morale. Whether charging into danger or rallying his troops, that gaudy uniform makes sure everyone knows exactly where General Custer is.
Well, fast forward to June 30th, in Hanover, Pennsylvania. Custer and the 1st and 7th Michigan Cavalry, they're passing through with the 5th and 6th trailing about 7 miles back. Suddenly, we hear some gunfire. A courier reports that Farnsworth Brigade is under attack by Confederate cavalry in Hanover's side streets. Custer, he rallies his Wolverines, and he gets orders from Kilpatrick to engage the enemy northeast of town near the railway station. He deploys his troops, advances, and after a sharp firefight, the rebels pull back.
Damn right.
Oddly, they retreat northeast, not west, where Lee's army is supposed to be.
Uh-oh.
This small clash delays Confederate General Jeb Stuart from linking up with Lee, a seemingly minor moment that ripples into the bigger picture.
It does.
We all know we've already covered Jeb and Robert E. Lee. This actually
Son of a bitch.
probably cost him the Battle of Gettysburg.
Probably cost him the war.
Potentially, maybe.
Captains. Captain James Kidd of the 6th Michigan later wrote that under Custer's skillful hand, the brigade became a tight, cohesive unit. The very next morning, which was July 1st, they rode through Abbottstown, still hunting Stuart's cavalry. Gunfire from Gettysburg catches their ears, and by nightfall in Heidlersburg, they learned that General John Buford's cavalry has found Lee's army at Gettysburg. And here we go, boys, because on the 2nd of July, orders arrive. Custer's brigade needs to hustle north to disrupt General Richard Ewell's communications and ease pressure on Union forces. By mid-afternoon, near Hunterstown, Pennsylvania, Custer spots Stuart's cavalry. He's like, Riding ahead alone, he realizes the rebels don't know his troops are nearby, so he sets a trap. He positions his men along sides of the road, hidden from view with the 1st and 5th Michigan Lieutenant Alexander Pennington's artillery behind a low-rise.
Well, to spring the trap, Custer grabs a troop, 6th Michigan Cavalry, and he shouts, "Come on, boys, I'll lead you this time," and charges straight at the rebels. It works, because over 200 Confederate horsemen came racing after him. But it's costly, because half his men are hit in the deadly rebel fire.
Yeah.
Custer's horse goes down, leaving him stranded. Private Norval Francis Churchill of the 1st Michigan, he saves the day, galloping up, shooting Custer's nearest attacker, and pulling him to safety.
Look at that shit.
Come on, old leader.
Look at that. The pursuing Rebs run into a wall of Union rifle fire. Canister rounds from 6 cannons, forcing them to break off. Both sides withdraw, licking their wounds. After a night spent mostly in the saddle, Custer's brigade reaches 2 taverns, which is in Pennsylvania. It's about 5 miles southeast of Gettysburg. They did that at about 3 a.m. On the 3rd of July, Farnsworth, his brigade, it joins them. And by daybreak, they're ordered to protect Meade's flanks. Custer's about to face some of his finest hours in the war, leading his Wolverines into the heart of the Gettysburg campaign.
Well, that day at the battle, it's raging. Confederate General Robert E. Lee has a bold plan, which is shared with only a few trusted subordinates. He says, we got to do a massive assault to crush George Meade's Union forces. Well, no shit. James Longstreet, he'll hit Cemetery Hill from the west. Jeb, he'll strike Culp's Hill from the north or the southeast. And Richard Ewell, he'll attack Culp's Hill from the north. The goal is to collapse the Union lines at Culp's Hill and roll up their defenses on Cemetery Ridge. To pull this off, Lee sends Stuart on a long flanking maneuver with 6,000 cavalrymen and mounted infantry as well. Cavalrymen.
Right. By mid-morning, Custer's at the intersection of Old Dutch Road and Hanover Road, 2 miles east of Gettysburg. This is joined by Brigadier General David McMurtry Gregg. Gregg, he positions Custer's Wolverines at the northeast corner, where Custer sends scouts to check nearby woods. Gregg, he places Colonel John Bailey McIntosh's brigade. He said he wants to go near that intersection, and he sends the rest of his men on picket lining, 2 miles.
We don't want a war.
Right. On a picket duty 2 miles southwest. This leaves about 2,400 men under McIntosh, 1,200 under Custer, backed by 10 3-inch guns from Colonel Alexander Pennington and Captain Allenson Randall's artillery, which is a total of 3,600 Union cavalry facing Stuart's 6,000 Confederates.
That's all right. Around noon, Custer's men hear cannon fire. Stuart's signal to Lee that he's in position and undetected. But is he?
Right.
But Gregg, he gets a warning. A large rebel cavalry force is moving along the York Pike, possibly aiming to outflank the Union right. Pleasanton orders Gregg to send Custer to cover the far left. But with most of Gregg's force already spread thin, Custer and Gregg agree he needs to stay put. Not a good idea.
Right.
It's 2,700 Union cavalry against 6,000 rebels.
Ooh.
It's a pretty tough spot, 'cause fighting soon erupts between skirmish lines. Stuart, he orders an attack by General Albert Jenkins' mounted infantry. But the Union troopers from the 1st Michigan, 1st New Jersey, and 3rd Pennsylvania hold firm.
Look at these guys. For him. Stuart's 4-gun battery opens fire. Custer's Pennington answers back, destroying 2 of Stuart's guns and pausing the action. Around 1 p.m., a massive Confederate artillery barrage begins, signaling the coming assault on Cemetery Ridge. Jenkins' men attack again, but run out of ammo and fall back. Resupplied, they push forward, but the outnumbered Union cavalry retreats, firing as they go. Custer, he sends most of his 5th Michigan to forward on foot. This is forcing Jenkins' men's back again.
Well, the Confederates bring in 150 sharpshooters from Fitzhugh Lee's brigade. Stuart orders a mounted charge by the 9th and 13th Virginia Cavalry. Custer's 5th Michigan starts running low on ammo, and the fight turns brutal, hand to hand, stabbing each other with the bayonets. Seeing the tide turning, Custer mounts a counterattack, leading fewer than 400 fresh troops of the 7th Michigan Cavalry. Come on, you Wolverines, he shouts, forming a line 5 ranks deep, 5 rows of 80 horsemen, and charges the retreating rebels. Well, they hit a wood rail fence, jamming men and horses into a chaotic mess.
Oh, I bet. The 9th and 13th Virginia attack Custer's left flank on foot, while the mounted 1st Virginia hits the right. Custer pulls men back to Pennington's artillery near Hanover Road, where canister fire and a remounted 5th Michigan drive the old rebels back. Both sides then regroup.
This shit's intense, boys.
Damn, by 3 p.m., the old rebel artillery barrage stops. Stuart's entire force appears a half a mile away, advancing in a tight column of squadrons. A grander spectacle rarely seen, as one observer put it. Stuart, he knows time's running out to hit the Union rear at Cemetery Ridge. He bypasses McIntosh's cavalry, 1st New Jersey, 3rd Pennsylvania, and part of Purnell's legion with ease as they fall back into the woods.
Well, unfortunately, his last obstacle is Custer and his 400 veteran troopers of the 1st Michigan. Outnumbered, Custer, he doesn't hesitate. He draws his saber, tosses off his hat to show his long yellow hair, and yells, "Come on, you Wolverines!" He charges head-on, colliding so fiercely that horses flip and riders are crushed.
Oh, shit.
The Confederate advance stalls. The 5th, 6th, 7th Michigan, they hit Stuart's right flank, while McIntosh rallies men from the 1st New Jersey and 3rd Pennsylvania to strike the left. Captain Miller, defying orders, he leads a charge, saying, "If you back me up in case I'm court-martial, I'll order a charge."
Ooh.
And you know damn well Custer's going to.
The rebel column crumbles into chaotic saber and pistol fights. Within 20 minutes, Union artillery opens on Pickett's charge.
Oof.
Signaling Stuart's window to join the main assault is gone.
Go on.
He retreats to Crest Ridge. Custer's brigade loses 257 men at Gettysburg, the highest loss of any Union cavalry brigade.
Might have saved him, though.
In his
Not
report,
the people, but the battle.
right. In his report, Custer says, "I challenge the annals of warfare to produce a more brilliant or successful charge of cavalry." For his gallant and meritorious services, he earns a brevet promotion to major in the regular army.
Look at this guy. Apparently they agreed with him, huh?
I guess so.
Well, it's 1864 now. Custer, he's now commanding the 3rd Division of the Cavalry Corps under Major General Philip Sheridan, and they're heading down to the Shenandoah Valley. This campaign, known as the Burning, isn't just about fighting soldiers. Sheridan, he targets the civilian population's resources to cripple the Confederate war effort. Yeah. Custer's Wolverines play a key role, and by year's end, they help defeat Confederate Lieutenant General Jubal Early's army in the Valley campaigns of 64. Earlier that year, though, in May and June, Custer, he got promoted to captain in the 5th Cavalry May 8th, and brevet lieutenant colonel May 11th, and he's over there supporting the Overland campaign. He's fighting in the Battle of the Wilderness, takes division command, joins the Battle of Yellow Tavern, and that's where his old contemporary, old Jeb, is dead.
Yeah, poor guy. Well, June brings in the Battle of Trevilian Station, the largest all-cavalry clash of the war. Sheridan, he aims to wreck the Virginia Central Railroad and cut the old rebel Western supply line. Custer, he captures General Wade Hampton's divisional train, which was a major score, but he gets cut off, suffering heavy losses. Watches his own division's trains, including his personal baggage, get overrun by the enemy.
Oh no, you can't get his little flashy suits no more.
It's a rough day, but he's relieved before it's a total disaster. Later, when Early threatens Washington, D.C., via the Shenandoah Valley, Sheridan and Custer are sent back. They pursue the old Confederates at the Third Battle of Winchester, and they crush Early's army during Sheridan's counterattack at Cedar Creek.
Almost got there. After their Valley victories, Sheridan and Custer, they rejoin the main Union army at the Siege of Petersburg. They just hunker down for the winter. By April 1865, the Confederate lines break. Robert E. Lee, he retreats towards Appomattox Courthouse, with Union cavalry led by Custer hot on his heels. Custer shines at Waynesboro, Dinwiddie Courthouse, and Five Forks. And on the final day, his division blocks Lee's retreat and receives the first flag of truce from the Confederate force. Escorted through the lines to meet General James Longstreet, Custer, with his signature flaxen locks flowing, he himself demands an unconditional surrender in Sheridan's name. Longstreet, who's obviously not in command, brushes him off, saying, "Lee's over there meeting with Grant right now to decide the fate. What the?
Right.
Get out of my face, guy."
Fuck you, bitch. Custer is front and center at Appomattox Courthouse for the surrender. Sheridan gives him the table where it was signed, along with a note praising his gallantry for Custer's wife, Libby.
Oh.
She treasures it. And today, it's in the Smithsonian Institution.
Sure is.
15th April, 1865. Custer, promoted to Major General in the United States Volunteers at age 25. The youngest Major General in the Union Army. Not every move is heroic, though. April 25th, after the war ends, Custer's men illegally seize a prize racehorse, Don Juan.
Oh, Don Juan.
Worth $10,000.
A lot of money.
Hundreds of thousands in today's money. This happened near Clarksville, Virginia. This is complete with pedigree papers.
Man, they got the papers.
Custer rides the thoroughbred into the Grand Victory Parade in Washington, D.C. on the 23rd of May, causing a stir when the horse bolts.
What are you going to do?
The owner, Richard Gaines, complains to General Grant, who orders Custer to return Don Juan. Instead, Custer hides the horse, and he races it the next year and wins, only for Don Juan to die suddenly soon after. That's what you get, bitch.
What are you going to do?
Fucking horse thief. Look at it. Fucking hang you.
To the victor goes the spoils. Well, June 3rd, just after the war, Major General Philip Sheridan taps Custer to take command of the 2nd Division of Cavalry in the Military Division of the Southwest. His mission is to march from Alexandria, Louisiana to Hempstead, Texas, which is part of the Union's occupation forces. Custer, he arrives in Alexandria June 27th, spends just about a month assembling his units, which is 5 regiments of battle-hardened Western Theater cavalrymen. Clearly not going to be a quick job. He's got to gather and remount the division. It takes some time. July 17th, he officially takes charge of the Cavalry Division of the Military Division of the Gulf, and he renames it the 2nd Division of the Cavalry on August 5th. With his wife Libby by his side, Custer leads his men on a grueling 18-day march to Texas in August. From Louisiana, too.
Ooh.
Screw that.
That rough.
Right?
Yeah.
No.
That nasty. By the 27th of October, the division moves from Hempstead to Austin, arriving on the 4th of November. A few days later, on the 13th, Custer is named Chief of Cavalry for the Department of Texas, a role he holds until the 1st of February, 1866, succeeding Major General Wesley Merritt. Sounds straightforward, right? Not quite. Leading these battle-worn volunteers is no picnic. Many of them, especially those who fought along the Gulf Coast, are itching to leave federal service.
Like, haven't it been enough?
Right, the war's over. Fuck this. They're tired of campaigning and resent taking orders from an Eastern Theater general like Custer, whom some dismiss as a vain dandy with his flashy uniforms and long hair.
Well, Custer's push for discipline clearly isn't going to sit well. His men, particularly the volunteer regiments, they chafe under his strict command, and tensions simmer to the point of near mutiny. By November, the division starts mustering out, replaced by the regular U.S. 6th Cavalry Regiment. Life in Austin seems pleasant enough for the troops, but many harbor grudges against Custer. The 2nd Wisconsin Cavalry in particular bristle at his leadership. Some of them even plot to ambush him as they muster out, but Custer gets heads up the night before and obviously got away from that.
Wow.
Damn, they're about to kill this dude.
This guy, huh? 1st of February, 1866, Major General Custer musters.
He's a musterer.
He musters out of the U.S. Volunteer Service and takes an extended leave of absence until September 24th. With the Civil War long gone, he's at a crossroads. He heads to New York City.
New York City?
Where he dips his toes into possibilities like railroads and mining. Industries booming in the post-war economy.
They sure are.
But a juicier offer comes his way. This is a chance to serve as a adjutant general in the army of the Benito Juarez, who's fighting against the Mexican Emperor Maximilian I, which was a puppet of Napoleon III's France.
Yeah. Well, the job also comes with a hefty $10,000 in gold, which would probably make him a millionaire.
Yeah.
Custer, he applies for a 1-year leave from the U.S. Army, backed by Ulysses S. Grant and Secretary of War Edwin Stanton. But not everyone's on board. Sheridan, his mentor, and his wife Libby, they disapprove. U.S. Secretary of State William Seward, he also objects, wary of an American officer leading foreign troops.
Right.
Faced with a choice, he can either resign from the Army or pass on the lucrative gig. Custer, he sticks with the Army, turning down the Mexican adventure. Just think if he never would have done that, he probably would have never got sent to Little Bighorn.
He probably would have died down in Mexico.
Doubt it. Kick their asses.
Right. May 1866, after his daddy-in-law's death, Custer returns to Monroe, Michigan. He's not just grieving. He's thinking about his future.
It's like, now this guy's finally out of the way.
Right. He has one idea, running for Congress. He dives into public debates about how to handle the post-war South, pushing for moderation and Reconstruction policies, which is a stance that puts him on at odds with the more radical voices of the time. He is also named head of the Soldiers and Sailors Union, a group seen as a counterpoint to the fiercely Republican Grand Army of the Republic, led by John Alexander Logan. Custer's role, well, he shows he's not afraid to step into the political fray.
Good for him.
That very September, Custer gets a front row seat to national politics when he joins President Andrew Johnson on a train tour called The Swing Around the Circle.
Yeah, and that same little expedition there, Grant and Johnson did not like each other. Well, Johnson's fighting to drum up support for his lenient Southern policies, and Custer, along with Libby, travels with him for most of the trip. Newspapers whisper that Johnson promised Custer a colonel's commission in exchange for his support, but Custer denied it, though tellingly he'd written to Johnson weeks earlier asking for just such a promotion. At one stop in Ohio near his hometown, Custer faces down a group of hecklers jeering Johnson. Standing his ground, he snaps. I was born 2.5 miles from here, but I am ashamed of you.
Ooh-wee. Well, it's now July 28th, 1866. Custer, he's 26. He's appointed lieutenant colonel of the newly formed 7th Cavalry Regiment, headquartered in Fort Riley, Kansas. By the 18th of October, he's on frontier duty, scouting in Kansas and Colorado until the 28th of July, 1867. He joins Major General Winfield Scott Hancock's expedition against the Cheyenne. This is a campaign aimed at asserting control over the southern plains. But tragedy strikes. June 26, 1867. Lieutenant Lyman Kidder's party, 10 troopers and a scout carrying dispatches from General Sherman to Custer, massacred by Dakota Sioux and Cheyenne while heading to Fort Wallace. Days later, Custer and his search party find the grim remains of Kidder's men, a stark reminder of the dangers of the frontier. I mean, you keep on pushing these sons of bitches over and over and over. Here, live here. Why you can't live here? Live here. Why you can't live here? We found gold. Live here. Oh no, we found gold.
We promise you guys just move to the west of the Mississippi. You guys can have it forever. We'll never take it. Oh wait, this is valuable land. Now you guys gotta move to this little 10 miles square land in Oklahoma. Retarded. Well, Custer, his personal life lands him in hot water soon after this. He goes AWOL to visit his wife Libby, abandoning his post.
Oh, you can't do that.
For this, he's arrested and suspended at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas until August 12, 1868. But Major General Philip Sheridan, who's planning a winter campaign against the Cheyenne, he said, this dude's good, we want him.
Right.
Sheridan's poll gets Custer reinstated early, and he rejoins the 7th Cavalry October 7th, 1868.
Right.
He's then soon scouting again in Kansas and Indian Territory through October of 69.
Damn. Under Sheridan's orders, Custer, he helped establish Camp Supply in Indian Territory early November 1868. He did that for a base for winter campaign. You gotta have a base. You ain't messing around up there.
No.
27th November, he leads the 7th Cavalry in a dawn attack on Chief Black Kettle's Cheyenne encampment at the Battle of Washita River. Custer reports killing 103 warriors and taking 53 women and children prisoner, though Cheyenne estimates are lower, 11 warriors and 19 women and children. In a brutal move, Custer orders the shooting of most of the 875 captured Indian ponies, crippling the Cheyenne's mobility. The battle is seen as the first major United States victory in the Southern Plains War, forcing many Southern Cheyenne onto a United States assigned reservation. But the high civilian toll and pony slaughter stir controversy, even today.
Yeah, well, yeah, what doesn't? Well, in 1873, Custer, he sent to the Dakota Territory to protect a railroad survey party from the Lakota. August 4th, near the Tongue River, the 7th Cavalry clashes with the Lakota for the very first time, with one man killed on each side.
That's not too bad.
The next year, 1874, Custer, he leads an expedition into the Black Hills, which we all know the Lakota still are pissed about.
Yeah, sacred.
He announces the discovery of gold on French Creek near what's now Custer, South Dakota.
Son of a bitch.
That's one single report that sparks the Black Hills gold rush, drawing in a flood of prospectors and leading to towns like old famous Deadwood, notorious for its lawlessness. Custer's announcement sets off a chain reaction, escalating tensions with the Lakota that will echo and change his future forever because he has no future.
Right, son of a
That's
bitch.
over.
1875, the Grant administration is trying to buy the Black Hills from the Sioux. The Sioux refuse. And when they're ordered to report to reservations by January 1876, a brutal midwinter deadline they can't meet.
Right, and in the middle of the winter, come on, guys.
The administration brands them hostiles and tasks the army with rounding them up. Custer, he's slated to lead a spring expedition from Fort Abraham Lincoln, near modern-day Mandan, North Dakota. This was part of a three-pronged campaign. Colonel John Gibbon will march east from Fort Ellis, near Bozeman, Montana. General George Crook will head north from Fort Fetterman, near Douglas, Wyoming. Custer's 7th Cavalry is set to depart on the 6th of April, but trouble in Washington derails the plan. Trouble in Washington derails the plan. Breaking news.
Well, March 15th, 1876, Custer is summoned to testify before Congressman Heister Clymer's committee, which is probing corruption involving Secretary of War William Belknap, who resigned on March 2nd, along with President Grant's brother Orville. If you remember our Grant episode, you heard all about this. And that's got to do with traders profiteering from monopolies at armory posts. These traders were allegedly charging exorbitant prices, and Custer, having seen this firsthand at Fort Lincoln, is a key witness. He doesn't want to go, fearing he'll miss the Sioux campaign, and asks to submit written answers instead. Clymer insists, and Custer, aware of his testimony could be explosive, he tries to play it cautious. He's like, what do I do here?
Well, on the 29th of March and April 4th, he unleashes a barrage of accusations against Belknap. Many of those unsubstantiated, and even takes aim at Orville Grant.
You don't want to do that.
Claiming he extorted money for influence. Custer also pens anonymous articles in the New York Herald, exposing kickback schemes and implying Belknap's involvement. The Democratic press eats it up. Republicans call it a smear. Some historians, like Stephen Ambrose, suggest Custer might have been eyeing a Democratic presidential run in 1876, hoping a big win in the Sioux Wars would boost his profile.
It's all about the politics. Belknap, he's impeached, and the case heads to the Senate. Custer, eager to get back to his regiment, asks to be excused from further testimony. With a nudge from his boss, Brigadier General Alfred Terry, he's released. But President Grant steps in, ordering another officer to take Custer's place. Terry protests, saying no one else is qualified. Both General Sheridan and Sherman back Custer. Oh, Custer. That's so good. Sherman, he urges Custer to meet with Grant in person to smooth things over, but Grant refuses 3 meeting requests. Frustrated, Custer, he boards a train to Chicago on May 2nd to rejoin his regiment anyway. Furious, Grant orders Sheridan to arrest him for leaving without permission. May 3rd, Sheridan's staff, they nab him up in Chicago, sparking a public outcry. The New York Herald blasts Grant as a modern Caesar, questioning why officers are being dragged from railroad trains to satisfy the president's whims. Fucking Ulysses S. Trump, holy shit.
Yeah, the backlash puts Grant in a bind. If the Sioux campaign fails without Custer, he'll take the blame for ignoring his generals.
Yep.
So on the 6th of May, in St. Paul, Minnesota, Terry meets a desperate Custer, who, with tears in his eyes, begs for help. Terry and Custer send telegrams to Grant, with Sheridan's support, pleading for Custer to lead his regiment. And on the May 8th, Grant relents, but insists Custer operate under Terry's direct supervision. Thrilled, Custer tells Captain Ludlow, Terry's chief engineer, that he plans to cut loose from Terry and act independently.
I'm sure Terry don't give a shit either.
A hint of the bold, risky mindset that would define his next moves.
1874, Custer's Black Hills expedition, which sparked a gold rush, has ratcheted up tensions between the United States and Plains Indian tribes like the Lakota Sioux and the Cheyenne. Broken treaties and westward expansion have fueled violence on both sides. The Grant administration, eager to claim the Black Hills gold, he ordered all of the Lakota and the Arapaho in the unceded territory to report to reservations by January 31st, 1876, which it's the middle of winter, so basically impossible to meet those demands.
Right, and they knew that. Those who don't comply are labeled hostiles, and the Army is tasked with bringing them in. Custer, now Lieutenant Colonel of the 7th Cavalry Regiment, he's set to lead a spring expedition from Fort Abraham Lincoln, near modern-day Mandan, North Dakota. With Colonel Sam Sturgis on detached duty in St. Louis, Custer commands the regiment as part of a 3-pronged campaign alongside Colonel John Gibbon. They marched east from Fort Ellis, Montana, and General George Crook heading north from Fort Fetterman, Wyoming. They're going to meet somewhere in the middle.
They'll try. Well, in spring of 1876, Sitting Bull, the Hunk Papa, he's a Hunk Papa, the Hunk Papa Lakota, holy man. He gathers the largest ever assembly of Plains Indians, which included the Lakota, Northern Cheyenne, and the Arapaho. They all gathered up at Ash Creek, Montana, and later moved to the Little Bighorn River on the Crow Indian Reservation. This area, per the 1851 Fort Laramie Treaty, it's Crow territory, and the Lakota are there without permission, prompting the Crow to side with the Army to expel them. So what the hell are you doing on my land? May 17th, Custer's 7th Cavalry departs Fort Abraham Lincoln, but by June 15th, Major Marcus Reno's scouting party spots the trail of a massive Indian village along the Rosebud River. Rosebud.
Gotta get them up, gotta go. 22nd of June, Custer's regiment follows that trail. And on 25th of June, Crow scouts report a huge encampment near Little Bighorn. Custer, he plans to attack that very next day, but realizing his presence is known, he opts for an immediate assault, splitting his 600 men into 3 battalions. One under Major Reno, another under Captain Frederick Benteen, and then the last one led by, you guessed it, himself, with Captain Thomas McDougal and Company B guarding the pack train.
Reno, he charges the southern end of the village, but stops 500 to 600 yards short, dismounting to form a skirmish line. Lakota and Cheyenne warriors, they counterattack en masse, hitting Reno's exposed left flank and forcing a bloody retreat to the bluffs above the river, where his men make a stand, losing about a quarter of their command. Meanwhile, Custer rides north, hidden by bluffs, planning to attack from the north in a hammer and anvil maneuver with Reno.
Oh, he planned. According to Cheyenne warrior accounts by historian Grinnell, part of Custer's force tries to ford the river at the camp's north end, but is repelled by Indian sharpshooters. Pursued by hundreds of warriors, Custer's men retreat to a ridge north of the encampment, where Crazy Horse outflanks them. They block any chance to dig in. In some counts, they credit Gall with driving Custer to the ridge, though Indian witnesses dispute this. They're like, nah, that's not what happened.
His 208 men initially formed skirmish lines, with every fourth man holding horses, cutting their firepower. As the fight intensifies, many hold or hobble their own horses, further weakening their defense. When Crazy Horse and White Bull charge through the center of Custer's lines, order collapses. Some soldiers panic, they throw down their weapons and flee toward a knoll, where Custer, his officers, and about 40 men, they make their final stand.
Oh, shit. The warriors, they begin striking fleeing troopers with quartz or lances. Oh, outnumbered, facing possibly 1,000 to 2,000 warriors, though estimates range from 25 to 5,000. Custer's men
to 208 men.
Right. Custer's men are overwhelmed. The Indians strip the dead of firearms, reducing the cavalry's return fire, while their own grow stronger. In a desperate last stand, the troopers use their horses as breastworks, but the warriors close in, killing every man in Custer's command. The battle becomes known as Custer's Last Stand.
Sure was. After the battle, one lingering question is whether the Native American warriors even knew Custer was there. According to historian Gregory Michno, Cheyenne and Lakota accounts suggest they didn't. Shave Elk, he said that they didn't suspect they were fighting Custer and couldn't recognize him, alive or dead. Wooden Leg, he noted that enemies were too far away to identify during the chaos, and the Cheyenne only learned of Custer's presence weeks later at reservation agencies. Antelope echoed this, saying no one knew Custer was involved until much later. Thomas Marquis, interviewing Cheyenne in the 1920s, found they were unaware of Custer's role until months after the battle, and didn't even know Custer, didn't know other Custer family members like his brother Tom were there until Marquis told him in 1922.
Wow. Okay.
I mean, why would they have known?
Right. Yet, several warriors claim responsibility for Custer's death. White Bull of the Minneconjou, Rain in the Face, Flat Lip, and Brave Bear, they all said they struck the fatal blow. 2005, Northern Cheyenne storytellers shared an oral tradition that Buffalo Calf Road woman, a heroine of earlier Battle of Rosebud, delivered the final strike, knocking Custer off his horse with a club-like weapon. There's another account from the Oglala. He's a warrior, Joseph White Cow Bull. Joseph.
Okay.
This is by a biographer, Evan Connell. He suggests that Custer may have been shot early into the fight, which is probably likely.
Well, White Cowboy claimed he had hit a buckskin-clad rider in a big hat near the river as Custer's men approached, possibly causing a rapid collapse of their formation. The rider was next to a flag bearer and given orders, but when he fell, many attackers hesitated. Was it Custer? It's uncertain, because other officers like William Cook, Tom Custer, and William Sturgis also wore buckskin. And Custer's fatal wounds, which was a bullet below the heart and one in the left temple, were instantly lethal, making an early wounding at the ford over a mile from where his body was found unlikely.
Right.
Historian David Humphreys Miller, he suggests Custer's men wouldn't have left his body to be desecrated, adding to the doubt as well.
Right.
And we'll get to that little shot to the temple, too, because, yeah.
A different perspective comes from two elderly Cheyenne women. This happens in 1920s. They are relatives of Bona Seta, a Cheyenne woman taken captive by Custer's 7th Cavalry after the 1868 Battle of Washita River, where her daddy, Chief Little Rock, murdered. These women claim they recognized Custer's body on the battlefield, and they stopped a Sioux warrior from mutilating it. According to Cheyenne oral history, Monasata had a relationship with Custer after Washita, allegedly bearing him a child in 1869. though some historians argue Custer's sterility from a West Point era venereal disease points to his brother Tom as the daddy.
Oh.
And Cheyenne.
She didn't know.
Right. And
hey, Tom was saying he was George.
I'm General George Custer. Right. Ooh. In Cheyenne culture, such a relationship was considered a marriage. Oh, that's her hubby.
Got a kid. Well, the women reportedly told the Sioux warrior, "Stop, he is a relative of ours," and shoot him away. They then pierced Custer's ears with sewing awls, saying it was to help him hear better in the afterlife, before breaking his promise to Chief Stone Forehead to not fight Native Americans again.
Right.
When General Alfred Terry's column arrived 2 days later, they found most of the 7th Cavalry's bodies stripped, scalped, mutilated.
Damn.
Custer's body, he had the 2 bullet wounds. And then Captain Frederick Benteen noted the wounds didn't match .45 caliber ammunition, suggesting they came from long-range rifle fire.
Oh. Could have been friendly
temple?
fire. Could have been friendly fire.
Well, no, because the Indians grabbed a bunch of rifles.
Right. Lieutenant Edward Godfrey later described a gruesome detail. He said there's an arrow that had been forced into Custer's body. Custer and his brother Tom were wrapped in canvas and blankets and buried in a shallow grave, secured with a travoy basket and rocks. A year later, soldiers found the grave that was scavenged by animals, with only a handful of bones remaining.
Oh.
Custer's remains were reinterred with full military honors at West Point Cemetery, 10th of October, 1877. The battlefield, well, it's now a national cemetery. 1886 was its first year.
Yeah, let's take a look at his personal life. He married Elizabeth Clift Bacon, February 9th, 1864. They called her Libby. He first glimpsed her as a 10-year-old boy in Monroe, Michigan, where he grew up.
That, down by Detroit.
They're formally introduced in November 1862 while he's home on leave, but Libby's not immediately charmed. And her father, Judge Daniel Bacon, he isn't either. He sees Custer, the son of a blacksmith, as beneath her. It's only after Custer he gets the brigadier general at age 23 that Judge Bacon relents. 14 months later, Custer and Libby, they wed. Aww. Their bond becomes a constant in his life, even though he knocked up an Indian chick, supposedly. Right. With Libby often by his side, even on rugged campaigns.
Oh, I'm going wherever you go, baby. But there's another story, and it casts a dark, dark shadow. After the Battle of Washita River, November of 1868, this is where Custer's 7th Cavalry attacked Chief Black Kettle's Cheyenne camp. Captain Frederick Benteen, Scout Ben Clark, and Cheyenne oral tradition claim that Custer unofficially married Monasate, as we said, which is daughter of Chief Little Rock, who was killed in the attack. By January of 1869, 2 months after Washita, Monasate reportedly gives birth to a child, and Cheyenne accounts say she bore another child by Custer that very year. So 2 children?
Jeez. Well, we already know that they think it was actually Tom's.
Right.
In Clark's memoirs, he didn't mince words. He stated Custer picked out a fine-looking one and had her in his tent every night.
Oh.
Which fueled a debate that still lingers to this day. We're talking about it now.
It could have been lucky and had children.
Custer's larger-than-life persona earned him a slew of nicknames. The press dubbed him the Boy General, which was during the Civil War. And on the Great Plains, his troopers, with a mix of respect and resentment, called him Iron Butt or Hard Ass for his tireless riding and strict discipline.
Look at you hard ass, you little Iron Butt.
The Iron Butt.
His long, cinnamon-scented blonde curls,
Wait,
perfumed with hair oil, prompted the mocking ringlets. Off-duty, Custer was a curious soul collecting geological specimens from the University of Michigan. For the University of Michigan. In the year of 1873, month of September, it was a letter to Libby. He wrote that Indian battles and unsafe terrain limited his collecting, showing a side of him that few saw. He's like,
I can't collect.
No rocks today, bud. A horse lover, Custer, he bought several thoroughbreds in Kentucky and brought 2 of them, Vic for Victory and Dandy, on his final 1876 campaign, switching mounts every 3 hours and riding Vic into the Battle of Little Bighorn.
Oh.
His staghounds, Tuck and Blooch, they came too. But he left them with orderly John Berkman, who stayed with the pack train. Berkman, he haunted by not joining Custer. He's like, it haunts me to this day. He lived until 1925 when he took his own life. Why wait so long?
Custer was meticulous about his appearance. Of course, he's putting cinnamon scents in his hair. Libby once wrote that he brushed his teeth after every meal and washed his hands constantly. Habits she teased him for.
Okay.
Standing 5'11", he wore a size 38 jacket and 9C boots. with his weight fluctuating between 143 pounds after the Kansas campaign and 69 and a muscular 170 at his peak. Ooh. A phenomenal horseman, Custer mounted was an inspiration, somebody said. He was fit, able to leap from lying flat to standing. He did the old Shawn Michaels. He was a power sleeper as well, dozing off instantly for short naps. Libby described him sprawling on the grass for brief rests, surrounded by panting dogs like a human island.
Oh, okay. All right. The iconic image of Custer at Little Bighorn. Buckskin coat, flowing blonde hair. Well, guess what, guys? It's a myth. The June heat forced him and other officers to pack away their buckskins. Eric, our scout soldier, he noted that Custer, he tied his behind his saddle. With thinning hair, Custer and Lieutenant Varnum got buzz cuts before leaving Fort Lincoln, shattering the long-haired hero stereotype.
Kind of have it look good on painting. Custer, he wasn't just a cavalry officer. Some called him a media personality. He mastered the art of public relations in an era where print media ruled. He often invited journalists to join his campaigns, giving them front row seats to the action.
Okay.
One reporter was Mark Kellogg of the Associated Press. He rode with Custer to the Little Bighorn and tragically died there.
Oh.
These journalists' glowing accounts fueled Custer's reputation as a daring hero, which is a status that held strong well into right now, still.
Right. Well, let's take William Elroy Curtis. He's the first to report Custer's 1874 Black Hills gold discovery. His effusive praise painted Custer as a champion of America's manifest destiny.
Oh, there we go.
Cementing his image as a larger-than-life figure, driving the nation's westward expansion. But Custer didn't even just rely on others to tell his story. He was a prolific writer himself. He loved putting pen to paper, often staying up late at night. He maybe even sometimes all night to craft his thoughts. And then on 22nd of June, 1876, before leaving the steamer Far West for the final leg of his journey to Little Bighorn, Custer wrote through the night.
His orderly, John Berkman, stood guard outside his tent and found him the next morning, hunched over on the cot, just his coat and boots off, and the pen still in his hand. That dedication to writing wasn't new.
No.
Custer, he penned a series of magazine articles about his frontier experiences, and they were collected and published in 1874 as My Life on the Plains.
Oh.
The book remains a key primary source for understanding U.S. Native relations during the Indian Wars, and it offered a vivid, if one-sided, glimpse into his world.
Right.
I mean, obviously,
Right.
How's it going to be two-sided?
Right. After Custer's death, on the 25th of June, 1876, his widow, old Libby, becomes the chief architect of his legacy.
Don't they always?
Having joined him on many frontier expeditions, Libby channels her grief into writing, publishing books like Boots and Saddles, Life with Custer in Dakota. Also, Tenting on the Plains.
Ooh, tenting on the plains.
And she also wrote General Custer in Kansas and Texas, and Following the Gaiden. These works paint Custer as a heroic figure, cementing what's often called the Custer myth.
Well, the secrecy of the 1879 court inquiry into the Little Bighorn, kept under wraps until 1951. My, it helps this myth grow unchallenged as few official details counter Libby's glowing narrative.
Okay.
Battle of Little Bighorn becomes the most iconic episode of the Indian Wars, and it's not just Libby's doing. The Anheuser-Busch Brewery commissions a dramatic painting of Custer's last stand for an ad campaign.
All right.
Distributing framed reprints to saloons across the United States hung above bar counters. These vivid images sear the battle and the brewery's brand into the public's mind.
Okay. All right.
Poets and leaders pile on the praise. Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, he pens an adoring, if partly inaccurate poem. And President Theodore Roosevelt's lavish words delight Libby.
Oh.
Custer's death transforms him into a symbol of frontier valor.
But not everyone buys this hero bullshit. President Grant, a brilliant general, but no fan of Custer at all, especially after their 1876 clash. He doesn't even hold back, because in September 2nd, 1876, the New York Herald interview that he had, Grant calls the battle Custer's Massacre, blaming Custer for a wholly unnecessary sacrifice of his troops.
Oh, they called you the freaking butcher at one time, Grant.
Right. General Philip Sheridan, he takes a milder stance, offering a more balanced critique of Custer's decisions. Meanwhile, General Nelson Miles, who steps into Custer's shoes as a renowned Indian fighter, he defends him as a fallen hero betrayed by incompetent subordinates, pointing out the challenge of fighting when 7/12 of the command stayed out of the fray, despite hearing Custer's rifle shots.
They did when we did we did a whole episode on this, and they could the other guys. I think it was Reno or somebody. They heard from the bluffs a couple miles away and didn't even come.
They didn't do nothing.
Now, fast forward to modern times, and Custer's image takes a hit. Historian Evan Connell, in his 1984 biography, Son of the Morning Star, traces the shift in public perception. Early biographers like Frederick Whitaker, who rushed out a book in 1876, they portrayed Custer as a fearless cavalier. Connell notes, though, 19th century Americans thought differently. At that time, he was a cavalier without fear and beyond reproach. But by the late 20th century, Custer's stock plummets, with critics seeing him as reckless or imperialist. In 1953, W.A. Graham's The Custer Myth argues that without the blaze of glory of Little Bighorn, Custer might just be another Civil War cavalry leader, notable as the boy general, but overshadowed by others long forgotten. It's probably true. If he wouldn't have died like that, he probably,
Right, most likely. The disaster at Little Bighorn still fuels arguments over who's to blame. Critics point to Major Marcus Reno's failure to even press his attack on the southern end of Lakota and Cheyenne village. He halted after a single casualty and retreated to the river's timber. Captain Frederick Bentine's allegedly slow arrival and the failure of their combined forces to relieve Custer are also cited as key factors in an annihilation of Custer's battalion. But when it all comes down to it, Custer himself faces scrutiny.
Yeah, probably shouldn't have tried to ford the river or take out a village of 2,000 warriors when he had 208 men.
They know we're here, and they outnumber us by however much.
And if you recall, when we did the episode on Little Bighorn, before they even got to the camp, they spotted Indians on a hill watching them for like 2 days before that or something, and they knew that they saw, and even the Indian scouts that were with Custer was like, yeah, they're probably ready for us.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, June 20... Are we going to go through this? Probably. June 21st, while camped at Powder River, he turned down General Alfred Terry's offer of 4 companies from the 2nd Cavalry, boasting he could whip any Indian village on the plains with just his 7th Cavalry.
Okay.
He also left behind a battery of Gatling guns,
you idiot,
on the steamer Far West, despite knowing he faced superior numbers, and ordered his men to box their sabers, reducing their close combat options.
Because they still thought of the Indians as savages and barely even human. Well, these guys don't know anything. They can't have a organized army.
Well, June 25th, he split his 600-man force into 3, like we said, ignoring scouts' warnings about the massive Lakota and Cheyenne presence.
Even his 600-man force, I don't think it would have been.
It might have been fared a little better. He might have lived.
Maybe.
Well, that decision obviously left him critically outnumbered.
Historian Charles Hoffling, he argues that Custer's choices weren't reckless. Gatling guns, they say, they would have slowed the march through rough terrain. And Custer, he prioritized speed to catch the enemy off guard.
But you didn't catch him off guard.
Didn't do. Splitting forces was a standard cavalry tactic, meant to confuse the enemy and threaten their retreat. But critics like the United States Air Force Academy historian David Mills, in his 2022 anthology, The Worst Military Leaders in History, call Custer lucky rather than good. Mills quotes President Grant's 1876 letter to General Sherman, branding Little Bighorn a sacrifice of troops brought on by Custer himself that was wholly unnecessary. Mills argues that Custer's failure to heed intelligence about the Sioux, true numbers, proves personal bravery and unthinking aggression can't replace careful strategy. And luck is no substitute for competence.
True. Beyond tactics, indigenous critics and movements have long condemned Custer's role in broader injustices, of course. Standing Rock Sioux theologian Vine Deloria Jr., in a 1996 Los Angeles Times interview, compared Custer to Nazi SS officer Adolf Eichmann, calling him the Eichmann of the Plains. I don't know about that, but in his 1969 book, Custer Died for Your Sins, Deloria slammed Custer's violations of the 1868 Fort Laramie Treaty, which designated the Black Hills as unceded Sioux and Arapaho territory.
It did.
Custer's 1874 gold expedition and the 1876 Battle of Greasy Grass, which is Little Bighorn, I guess Indians call it Greasy Grass, maybe, defied this treaty, escalating the conflict.
Okay.
Critics also highlight the 1868 Washita River attack, where Custer, under Generals Sherman and Sheridan's total war orders, killed all the non-combatants, including women, children, and elders.
Yep, that was a massacre.
Yeah, Sherman's chilling directive called for vindictive earnestness against the Sioux, even to extermination, with no distinction for age or gender. Credible evidence suggests Custer and his men sexually assaulted female captives at Washita.
You know they did.
Washita. And one historian notes a frontier saying Custer endorsed, quote-unquote, Indian women rape easy. Jeez.
Okay. Indigenous resistance to Custer's legacy began immediately. Lakota warrior Good Fox, he recounted that 2 Cheyenne women, recognizing Custer's body after Little Bighorn, pierced his ears with awls, saying, "You smoked the peace pipe with us, but you would not listen. This will make you hear better." 1976, the American Indian Movement marked the battle centennial with a victory dance around Custer's death marker. Later pushing for the Custer battlefield to be renamed. Their efforts succeeded in the year of 1991, when it became the Little Bighorn Battlefield National Monument. In May of 2021, the United Tribes of Michigan, they passed a unanimous resolution demanding the removal of a Custer statue in Monroe, calling it a painful public reminder of the legacy of indigenous people's genocide, and branding Custer the Indian killer who does not deserve any glory.
Well, it's still standing as we speak. They're still trying to get it down.
There it is. Him and his buckskin and his long blonde hair.
Yeah, Monroe still up as we, they're still trying to take him down, but...
I mean, fuck statues anyway, I don't even care.
Right. But yeah, I don't think he would have been as popular if it wasn't for Bighorn.
Nope.
I mean, obviously we would have known about him because he did some things in the Civil War, but...
That's about it. Like kicking Juba Early's ass.
Right. Other than that, yeah. But, I mean, it happened, so we're talking about him, clearly.
The biggest mistake of his life.
He should have listened to Grant when Grant didn't want him to go, but he wanted to go.
If he wouldn't have found the gold in the first place.
That's true, too, yeah. So, yeah, it's George Armstrong Custer.
That's what happens when you get greedy. America's like, oh, wait, we gave him this land with gold on it? We got to move him again. But we already said they can stay.
You guys already said we'd never go farther than, or nobody would ever come on to this side of the Mississippi if you move us here. Well, guess what? Yeah, card subject
we
to
also
change,
pledge loyalty to the king.
Right, yeah. That's O.G.A. Armstrong. We'll be back next week for Nathan Bedford Forrest. You want to talk about KKK and how Michigan and racist?
Yeah.
Nathan Bedford Forrest, the first Grand Master, or whatever the hell they call him, of the KKK after the war.
Yeah.
Racist son of a bitch there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we'll have him next week. And then...
But was he, though?
Well, we'll see. We'll have more to come in every other week as well of Behind the Battles.
The following weeks.
Plus, we're going to probably here soon release another... campaign in full, like we did the Gettysburg one.
Okay.
So maybe Manassas or something. I don't know. So yeah, we'll do those.
Plus, every once in a while, we're throwing a battle that wasn't on the list that we found.
Well, those will be in the campaigns, right?
So that'd be nice.
So yeah, we got a lot to come. The battles of the American Civil War. We ain't done yet.
You ain't seen nothing yet.
So yeah. We'll be back next week for Nathan Bedford Forrest and more Behind the Battles of the American Civil War. We are the Mother Music Industry.
Bang, dang.